Wouldn't you love to be in a state where everybody was just working in the service sector and quaternary jobs, and you're producing technology and information and the rich stuff and the good stuff and the stuff that's going to make you even richer in the future? Yeah, every place on the planet should do that. Or can they? Can every state do that? I mean, somebody's got to grow the food. Somebody's got to cut down the trees. Somebody's got to make the microwave ovens and the cars we want. So I'm not even sure it's actually possible for every place on the planet to go through this economic evolution to be like the rich countries are in today's world. This is not me teaching you, actually. This is me posing the question. What do you think? Can every country on the planet become like the United States, Netherlands, Germany, Great Britain? Is it even possible? Is there enough stuff on the planet to support that, first off? But when you start to think about this critically, we all can't just provide services to each other. Somebody got to grow the damn food. So who knows? I'd say it's doubtful that all places on the planet could all economically rise to be like the rich countries are now. And some of them don't even want to anymore. And this is interesting times in which we live. There are some economic sector exceptions that I do want you to note. We'll go back to our chart. I already picked on China a little bit. China has specifically gone out of its way to say we are going to hold roughly a third or half of our workforce in the primary industry. Now, doesn't that sound counterintuitive? You're going to force half your labor force to work in primary industries that we already said aren't worth very much. Yes, China thinks this is a very wise move. Gotta admit, I agree with them. China's got over 1 billion people. China gotta have food. China's not interested in having 1 billion lawyers. Hell, they don't even want one, much less 1 billion. They need a bunch of people to keep growing food. So they are intentionally forcing diversification of their economic sectors by saying, no, we're gonna hold about half of you or a third in those primary industries to keep doing what you're doing. We have to have the food. We have to have the natural resources. And we don't have a need for 1 billion people providing services to each other yet, okay? So China's going to hold their primary, and China has become a manufacturing hub of the planet with that 22% in the manufacturing sector. That's how they're making all their money right now, because they have cheap labor. They got 1 billion people. They don't have to pay them that much, or somebody will take a job for a more competitive wage. So they have made tons and tons of money in that manufacturing sector, and they're continuing to grow it to produce stuff of more economic value that they can then export to all the Walmarts in America. Yeah, go check the shelves. It's all from China, okay? And they are increasing their service sectors, but they're trying to, again, keep this in check. They don't want this expanding to the point like it is in, say, the UK. China has no desire to have 80% of its workforce in services. Not yet, and maybe not ever. Somebody got to dig the ditches, man. So they are intentionally forcing diversification, which kind of goes against this whole economic sector evolution that I've now described to you. Other exceptions I like. Look at India. India does have that 60% in primary, and they are taking a different tack altogether. They have said, hey, we're not going to try to compete with China in the manufacturing sector. They're too good. They're already well established. Hell, they're the workshop of the world. They're producing goods and services which go all over the planet. We can't compete with them manufacturing, not with everything. So India is actually going out of its way to try to expand its service sector and its quaternary sector. Oh, bam, they're leapfrogging. India said, no, we want to invest heavily in high-end technologies, which is why when you call up Dell and you're like, hey, my Dell computer's broken, they say, hello, Bombay, India. I mean, that India is known now as the call center, service center for computer and technology and high-end stuff. But that's not all. That's just services. They have been pushing very hard and cranking out computer programmers in India because they see their future as high-end service and high technology and high information creation is going to be their path to a sustainable, bright, and rich future. So they're kind of bypassing the whole manufacturing thing. Not entirely. They're going to be producing some goods and putting lots of their 1 billion people to work in manufacturing as well. But a different focus than China altogether, and it will yield very different results. Another exception on this chart is Costa Rica. Look at Costa Rica. It's like, wow, Costa Rica looks really rich. Look at that. They got 20% in primary, 22% manufacturing. That's awesome. And wow, almost a whopping 60% is in the service sector. That's kind of like really rich countries. Well, yeah, yes and no. Costa Rica is doing pretty well, certainly better than its neighbors. But the service of note that they do in the service sector in Costa Rica is tourism. Overwhelmingly, they focus on tourism. And I'm not making fun of tourism, but tourism does not create the same levels of wealth and the same exceptionally high-paying jobs as opposed to doctors and lawyers and engineers and stuff in other more richer countries. So tourism is great. It's a service. They're very service sector oriented, but they're mostly lower wage jobs when you compare to, say, a place like the Netherlands. And finally, I like to pick on Saudi Arabia because the Saudis are a very rich country. High levels of wealth per capita. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But they only do one thing, and that's oil. And you don't even need to see a damn chart to know that. They make almost 100% of their wealth off of oil. And that seems great because they got a ton of it, the most in the world, and they export the most in the world every year. They're the biggest exporter. So that's how they've gotten away with becoming so rich and rich and rich and rich. But my Saudi friends, you're undiversified, bitches. You got nothing else going on in your economy. And what will happen to Saudi Arabia when the price of oil collapses someday? What will happen to Saudi Arabia if an alternative energy is created and no one wants oil anymore? Saudi Arabia will be broke. So that's why even the government of Saudi Arabia, they understand this. They're not dumb. They're trying to diversify, but they don't got a whole lot else going on. They're trying to push for high-end service sector stuff, but it hasn't really taken hold yet. As opposed to their neighbors, the United Arab Emirates. And this place is on fire for economic growth right now. The UAE is another oil-wealthy country, and they've made trillions off of oil in the last decades. And the government of UAE has been much more forward-thinking than all of its Gulf neighbors. And it said, hey, oil's going to run out someday, and we want to diversify. So they have gone out of their way to create manufacturing sectors and create specific service sectors like computer stuff. The UAE is now the Microsoft hub of the Middle East. Microsoft has a think tank there and has facilities there and has manufacturing facilities there. And the UAE has really pushed tourism and as a place to have international trade and business and finance connections. That's diversification. So that the UAE still makes tons, probably most of its money off of primary industries, but it has these other industries and other sectors represented, and they're really pushing the growth. That's what smart countries do, and why perhaps some poor countries that don't have any of that stuff may stay poor. And the rich countries that do have it actually may be in trouble if they're not diversified enough in the right directions in the future. So, people work these jobs in these economic sectors, extracting resources or processing those resources or manufacturing goods or providing services or creating information, all of which create wealth for the state/society as a whole. But how much wealth? How do we measure all that stuff for a state to decide who the rich states are and who the poor states are? Where are the rich people at? Where are the poor people at? How do we know who's doing the best off? Something called GDP. And we'll turn to that next.